Hi guys, and welcome to my second YouTube video. Today I'm going to show you how to make a hand-sewn face mask with a wire piece in the nose for anti-glasses fog. Here's one I made at the start of the pandemic. Fits over your nose like this, tucks under the glasses, and here's how it fits over my face. What you're going to need is some fabric. I'm using a t-shirt and a towel, scissors, a needle and thread, some hair ties to make the ear loops, a marker. If you have one, a disposable mask for a template, but if not, I'll show you the dimensions. Some wire for the nose piece. What I'm using is a sturdy wire that you get on the top of these fancy beers. You can also use wire that comes with round vegetables, or you can roll up some aluminium foil and put that in the nose piece, but I've found this very thick and sturdy wire to be the most useful. So the first step is to take your disposable mask and fit it over your face. Make sure that it's extended and covers your chin, and then take it off, fold it in half, and this is going to be what we use to trace out our fabric. Grab your fabric and fold it in half. Now grab your disposable mask and line it up with the fold in the fabric. Now grab your marker and trace around the outside of the mask, leaving half a centimeter or roughly a quarter of an inch. This will leave space for the stitching and maintain the original size of the mask once it's done. If you don't have a mask to trace, here's how you can measure out your own dimensions. At the fold in the fabric, mark 2 dots 10 centimeters apart. Then mark another 2 dots along the same line, roughly 18 centimeters apart. This will be the full height of the mask, from the bottom of the chin to the top of the nose part. Now draw 2 diagonal lines between that 10 centimeter mark and the 18 centimeter mark. They should go in roughly 2 centimeters from the fold in the fabric. Now measure in 10 centimeters from the fold in the fabric. This will mark the end of the mask closest to the earpieces. Draw 2 diagonal lines down, this time going in roughly 4 centimeters, and connect them with another line. Don't be afraid to draw more than one construction line. This side will be inside the mask and not visible from the outside. As you can see here, I wasn't quite steep enough with my slopes, and so I'm just going to redraw those lines now. Alright, now back to our original piece of fabric. Now it's time to grab the scissors and cut the mask out. Following the lines carefully. Try to keep the fabric folded down the middle. If you have pins, pin the 2 sides of the fabric together to keep them from slipping. And here you have it. This side has a construction line on it. Whoops, so let's just flip this over. Nice. Now for the other side of the mask. Here I'm using a black t-shirt, and so I've switched markers to a darker color. A black Sharpie probably shows up pretty well. Here I've switched on a bright light so I can see the lines better. Now cut carefully along the lines once again. And now we have our 2 matching pieces for the inside and outside of the mask. Now onto some sewing. First you want to sew along these 2 short edges. You want to sew so that any construction lines are on the outside of the mask here, because these stitches will end up inside the mask. Notice that I'm staying a few millimeters from the frayed edges of the fabric here. And here I'm just doing the other edge. If you haven't noticed already, I'm a pretty amateur sewer. This is how I tie my knots, and I know there's a better way, I just never remember how to do it. Now do the same along the short edges of the second piece of fabric. And here's me doing that final short edge on the second piece of fabric. Okay, now that we've sewed the two short edges of the two pieces of fabric, we have our two matching mask halves. If we put them on top of each other and flip one inside out so that the stitching is all on the same side, we'll get a feel for what the mask will look like in the end. You can see me just jostling the fabric around and getting everything lined up. It looks like on some parts the red piece overhangs the black piece a little. This isn't really a big deal. When we sew these together, these extra overhanging flaps will just be left on the inside of the mask. Now it's time to measure out the wire that's going to go across the top of the mask to prevent those fogging glasses. Don't be afraid to use a long piece of wire that extends almost to the end of the mask. I think too short of a wire is a much bigger problem than too long a wire. Here I'm just breaking the wire by bending it back and forth, but if you've got some wire cutters, they would do a better job. Make sure you fold over the end of the wire so you don't end up poking yourself in the face. And in this case, pliers would probably do a better job, but I'm just working with what I got. Now to hold the wire, I like to use a section of a hemline here. You can see that this is the sleeve of the t-shirt, and I found a spot that is just long enough to accommodate this wire. Now you can cut out this hemline, making sure that you leave a little bit of fabric between the cut line and the stitching so that we don't break that nice little pocket that's going to hold the wire. Pop the wire in, and now we're just going to sew the ends closed. Sew back and forth over the end a few times. We want to keep the wire securely in the pocket. And here I am just sewing up the other end with the wire firmly inside. As you can see, things are getting a little tangled. I'm having a bit of a struggle. Oh boy. I'll fast forward through the details, but in the end we get something working. Now we're going to take our wire and sew it to the top of one of the pieces of fabric. Fold the wire in half and put it around one of the pieces of fabric. Make sure you leave a few millimeters here between the edge of the fabric and where you're going to sew the wire pocket. Another thing to note is that these stitches will be visible on the outside of the mask. I'm realizing that at about this point in the video, and I've decided that this mask is going to have the black side on the front and the red side inside the mask. If I was making this for a friend, I'd probably switch to a red or a white thread. But since this is just a spare mask for me, I'm not too worried about it. Sew the nose piece on all the way along, from one side across the bridge of the nose part to the other side. Okay, now that the nose wire is attached to one piece of fabric, take the second piece of fabric, flip it so the stitching is on the inside, and then fit it inside the other piece of fabric. Make sure those first stitches that we did are on the outside here, so your mask is essentially inside out. Now what we're going to do is sew these two pieces of fabric together along these two lines, and across the middle and down the other side. Here I'm stitching above the nose wire so that in the end it'll be on the inside of the mask. Alright, skipping ahead, I've sewed all the way across the top, and now it's time to sew across the bottom lines. What I'm showing in the video is two lines out from the center to the edge. What I'm actually going to do is one long line from edge to edge. And here I am just finishing it off. And I forgot to video it, but now you need to turn the mask inside out. It's time to attach the ear loops. First cut the 4 hair ties, so that we have 4 lengths of elastic. Now fold the edges at one end of the mask in. Now sew through one side of the mask, and then thread the hair tie onto the needle. Now sew the two pieces of fabric together at the end of the mask. This will seal the mask. What I'm doing here is an invisible stitch, which I've only just learnt and I'm not very good at, but you can also just do a normal stitch down the side. It's good if the thread matches the fabric that you want on the outside of the mask so that it's a bit more hidden. Once you start reaching the end, make sure you leave space to poke that second ear loop through. Thread your needle through the elastic. It's a bit fiddly, but I like to try and get it right through the middle of the elastic. And then poke that short end into the mask so it's hidden. And then finish sewing it up. I like to do a couple of loops around the elastic. And finally tie it off. Here's what it looks like in the end. I'm pretty pleased with how the invisible stitch turned out. Now let's do the other side. And ta-da! Here's the final result. Now we just need to tie some knots in these ear loops. The knot I'm doing here is called a square knot, and I'll leave a link in the description for a nice video tutorial on how to do it. And here's the final product. Before you tighten the knots too tightly, do a fit check and make sure everything feels nice and snug around your face. This one fits pretty well. I originally wanted to cut off these extra pieces of elastic, but I found that sometimes these knots come loose and it's handy to have those extra bits there. Always wash your mask if it gets dirty, or if you're in close contact or in a close room with someone from outside your isolation pod. One of my favorite things about this mask is it's washable, and so I try to wash mine with hand soap in the sink every day and hang it out to dry, and it's usually dry by morning. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and let me know in the comments if you try to make these masks and how you find them. Do 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 boop boop pop bloop.